You're listening to The Phillip Jordan Show.
Everybody joining me on the show today is Chris Carter. You can check him out over on Locked On Steelers every single day, and you check him out also on Locked On NFL, writer for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and you check him out on TV as well at WPXI. And Chris, I appreciate you coming on the show. The AFC North, a very interesting division, but I appreciate you taking time and coming on and talking about it.
Thanks for having me, Phillip.
I'm glad to have you. Glad to have you going through these divisions. It's kind of like it's a great exercise for me diving into these teams. It's a lot of fun, and just your overall thoughts. You look at the AFC North. It looks like it's a division that obviously with the Ravens and the Bengals at the top. The Steelers are there trying to get back to the playoffs. You got the Browns and Deshaun Watson. Just overall, just your general thoughts. What's your overall feeling on this division?
I mean, it still feels like it's Cincinnati's division to win, right? You know, they're the team that's won it the last 2 years. Joe Burrow has really stepped into some really strong shoes right now with him and Jamar Chase. You know, there's some questions about the defense that they've retained. Their offensive line hasn't really taken a step forward, but the defense has won them some big games in the playoffs. But it's still that offense that makes them go, right. So they're going to be top dogs. I think the Ravens have an interesting crossroads with a new offensive coordinator. How does Megan work with Lamar Jackson? How does that new offense look like? Does it work more for Jackson? Does it work against him? Is it kind of the same? Well, time will tell. The Browns are in a position where personally, I think that they're kind of the same as they were last year. They didn't get to draft really too many people because of the Deshaun Watson trade. They signed Zadarius Smith, but lost Jadeveon Clowney. So I guess that's kind of a give and take there. I think that their biggest thing is they got to hope that Deshaun Watson is everything they traded for, because if he's similar to last year, or not even if he's not an elite quarterback for them, they have missed entirely on that. And that's entirely what they built their team on. And their window is about to shut very fast if he is not who they think he is. And then there's the Steelers, who last year just missed the playoffs despite missing the best defensive player in the NFL for 2 months. And I think that they're in a position where Kenny Pickett finished the season strong, but can he show that was more than just a strong rush to the end of the season? And that's he's actually grown. And if he does show that, the Steelers are going to be competitive. If he doesn't, I think they're going to look very similar to last year, around 9 wins. But I think that this offense will take a step forward, and you will see the Steelers competing. And I think this is going to be a very competitive division. You could see 3 teams make the playoffs from it, even with how deep the AFC is this year.
Yes, it's like I almost feel like, well, maybe not the South, but 3 of the 4 divisions. I feel like you could maybe make an argument. You could get 3 teams in. The AFC South probably just would, but we're not here to talk about that division. But you told me, and starting off with the Ravens, a 10-18 from last year, made the playoffs almost. I mean, they came very close to knocking the Bengals out in the wild card round.
With a backup quarterback.
Yeah, with Tyler Huntley in there, quarterback went 2-3. Hey, but he was a Pro Bowler last year, so you know how that worked, how the season worked out. But obviously Lamar Jackson, and that's the key to this whole team, them taking that next step. And they bring in Todd Monken, obviously coming from Georgia. He's got experience in the NFL with the Buccaneers and the Browns. But the most recent thing for football fans in general, what he did with Stetson Bennett there at Georgia. What are your feelings with that? You mentioned the offense a little bit there, just your overall thoughts. And they add in Odell Beckham. They've got Nelson Aguilar. So look, they have made the effort to get better at wide receiver. But what are your thoughts just on what we could see them offensively?
I'm one of the few in Pittsburgh who give Lamar Jackson a lot of respect for what he's done so far. A lot of people here will call him a running back, at the quarterback position. And listen, Lamar Jackson does have his throwing problems at times, but this is a guy who I think sees the field very well. I think sometimes his deep ball accuracy wanes, but he's a threat. And I think that he's been a threat without really having a receiving threat other than Mark Andrews. And honestly, I don't think Mark Andrews is, a top tier tight end. I think that he's like kind of the solid, affordable tight end that you keep around and can be a playmaker. But with Odell Beckham Jr., And I really like Zay Flowers. I covered him when he was at Boston College, just when I covered the ACC, whenever they played Pitt. And that was a guy wherever he was on the field, you had to know at all times because he was explosive. And so you can now give him those two receivers with Mark Andrews and a new offense. I think there's a chance that Lamar Jackson could take a step up this year. And then there's the question of the Ravens defense. But Lamar Jackson, they can be playmakers. And I do think that they're going to make some noise this year. The question will be, can they consistently do that? And can the offense kind of allow Lamar Jackson to be himself? And can he stay healthy? Because he's been having health issues the last couple seasons. And I think that could be that could be the thing that puts them in a lot of trouble. They were able to survive with Huntley last year. I don't know if they'll be able to do that again 2 years in a row.
Yeah, you mentioned their defense, and last year they struggled first half of the year. Then they get Roquan Smith, and the defense played a much better second half of the year. But they had released Calais Campbell, and that was opened up some cap money for them as well. Then lost Marcus Peters as well. And you talked about the defense there. You got questions with this defense on how good they can be. Can they do what they were doing the second half of last year?
Yeah, I mean the defense. You look at how they're built and the way that they performed last year. I mean the Ravens, like you said, it was kind of a tale of two tales. But they finished third in the league. So if they can replicate what they're doing there, I think they put themselves in a good position. The Ravens and the Steelers operate very similarly as organizations. They look for similar strengths. They look to build in similar ways because there's a good formula there for finding success. They want to stop the run on defense, and then they want to get after the quarterback, and they want to be able to make big plays there. Harbaugh and Tomlin, two Super Bowl champion coaches. Who do a lot of things the right way. So the defenses, they're going to be there. Marlon Humphrey, still Marlon Humphrey. He's going to be a problem. So is Roquan Smith. I mean, they have the talent there, and I think that there's going to be a challenge. But I wonder how well it'll balance this year as the season goes along. I think the Ravens are they're not going to make this an easy road for any of the other AFC North teams. That's why I think this division could be so interesting, because I think all four teams could really beat each other in different ways. They all four have various strengths, and I put the Ravens kind of on the same level with the Steelers. I think that they're both kind of in the same place as far as their. The Ravens have a better a better quarterback right now because Lamar Jackson has the experience, but I think the Steelers have the better defense. And I think that they're going to be a team those are two teams that I think they're going to split on the year. And I think it's going to come down to how they handle their own schedules. And then, who can steal games from the Bengals? Because I still think the Bengals are the top dogs this year in the division. And that's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, it just makes my heart happy whenever I hear the words Steelers and Ravens together, because whenever I look at the schedules, okay, when are these two? Please have a Sunday. For some reason, when they play on Sunday Night Football, they're usually classic when these two teams play, but it seems like NBC Sunday Night Football, it even adds to it with those two. And you mentioned the Bengals, so that's the next step. Look, and what everybody's talking about now is Joe Burrow, and what's the injury like? Because it seems like it's unclear how long he would be out. They just signed a former XFL quarterback, re-signed it. I'll be honest with you, Chris, I was hoping they would get A.J. McCarron, as a guy that's a fan that watches the XFL, USFL, and all those other leagues. If they have to go in an extended period without Joe Burrow, what are they?
I think they're toast. If it's just an extended period and he's back by mid-season, they can hang around and then he can propel them. But if they're missing him, I think they're similar to the Steelers last year, like when TJ Watt was out and how the Steelers just were not in a position to win. I think Joe Burrow props up this team a lot, and with the changes they had to make on defense, they're especially leaning on him. So I mean, I haven't seen any update on the season yet. On the injury, I know it was a calf injury, and they're waiting to see how it plays out. I know he wore a compression sleeve on his right calf, on Monday, and it didn't seem too bad. So I mean, if it's not serious, they're fine. They'll be in a great position. But if it is serious, I do wonder how they survive, because not only are they a team that relies on him, but they're a team that I think that without him, I mean, it is a team that relies on the passing game to succeed. And you take that away, I think that their offense becomes mediocre, and their defense, with the changes that they've kind of had to make this year, I think the defense would be in a position to not hold them up the way the defense could have the last 2 years, because you look at some of those playoff wins and it was the defense making the big plays to kind of keep them alive.
Yeah, and with him, and obviously, down here in the Southeast, I remember watching him at LSU. It's just he's always carried that certain kind of swagger, and in a good way. And I feel like it did at LSU, and it has it with Cincinnati. It rubs off on the rest of the team when he's out there, because one, he's as tough as can be, and then again, that swagger he has.
No, I agree. He has a swagger to him, and that's something that that's absolutely part of his persona. And that's something that he has confidence. That's good. You want that from your quarterback. So I mean, again, that resonates with the whole team. I think that's why you've seen success with the Bengals and with Joe Burrow. I'll be intrigued to see what happens eventually when the Bengals do have to pay him, and then they're not able to keep all the playmakers that they want to keep. They'll keep Jamar Chase, but can they keep him and T. Higgins and pay an offensive line around him and keep a defense together? Those are going to be tough questions. But I think Joe Burrow, he's worth the money to be a long-term franchise quarterback, and then see, how your team builds around over the years.
Yeah, and I wrote it here on my notes. Win now, because like you just mentioned, the contract, and I mean, how big of a year? I mean, obviously not pressure. I mean, he'll be back. You mentioned the guys they will be bringing back to as well, but just kind of with the unit they have now, because they're going to make some decisions when it does come time to his new contract coming up. So is this probably their best chance this year to maybe do something past the conference championship, get back to the Super Bowl?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at all their contracts like that. I haven't studied when other guys are up. I think that there is that window of needing to strike while you're paying your quarterback on a rookie deal. Because when you don't strike in that window, then you have to win while you're paying them, and then you can't have the great roster that like how the Eagles did around Jalen Hurts, and like the Bengals have around Joe Burrow. They were able to afford to pay safeties to stick around to be a big part of their defense. They were able to afford to go get different playmakers here and there and keep guys around. The Steelers are doing that right now with Kenny Pickett. I think if this was Ben Roethlisberger a few years ago, the Steelers wouldn't have been able to pay Alex Highsmith to stick around with T.J. Watt, and so it's that benefit. And I think the Bengals, they're nearing the end of Burrow's rookie deal window, and that's a real thing. But I also think that, Joe Burrow is a guy that you have to pay. And then eventually when you do, you find ways to win while he's getting paid. So it'll just matter on which skill players they can keep and how they can continue to build around him. I think that'll be interesting. And it'll also be interesting to see where he falls in the market. Does he reset everything? How much higher does he get paid? What's his guaranteed money? What kind of deal is it? All those types of things will be very interesting.
So moving on, staying in state, but the Cleveland Browns, you mentioned them a little bit. It's all about Deshaun Watson, 3-3 when he was there last year, when he got the final six. But I mean, he didn't play well. I mean, this does not look like the guy when we last saw on the field, which I think a lot of people think would be top 5 quarterback in the league that final year there in Houston. They did add some more receivers, Elijah Moore and Marcus Goodwin there. Amari Cooper still there. They drafted Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. And you said this team early in the opening that this team looks about like what they were last year, 7-10 last year. But can this team be better than that than they were record wise?
They can be. I say this all the time. Like, there is such a thing as organizational integrity. There is such a thing as the organization, like the success of an organization and everything. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this is the Browns' year over the last 20 years. Like, it's just, and it's just, I look at this, and last year was supposed to be their year. And then, when Deshaun Watson was back, they're like, oh, yeah, now they're going to make a run. And then they end up getting beat by 14 by rookie Kenny Pickett in the final week of the season. I'm not sold on the Browns. I'm not until they prove that they are not the same organization that just flounders every single opportunity that they're given, throughout the years. I think that they certainly have talent. They'll be a team that will be tough to beat at certain times, but I think that when big games happen, they're going to struggle and they're going to fall. And I think that they finish in last place in the division again.
All right, well, teaser to the end, the last question of here on the show. But yeah, I'm kind of, when I look at these teams, I agree with you on that one. Now the Steelers, obviously, like I said on top, you're host of Locked On Steelers, a 9-8 team last year, and I just say this: I think Mike Tomlin is one of the more underappreciated coaches in the NFL. I do not believe he gets talked about enough at the top. I mean, just what he's done. I mean, and just this organization overall, 19 straight non-losing seasons. I mean, with everything you mentioned, TJ Watt going down, he was down for 7 games. They were 1-6 in those games, 8-2 when he did play. I mean, and then you're playing a rookie quarterback. The running game was not great all the time. Just all the stuff that the Steelers had going on last year, and they still go 9-8. Just how much of a testament is that who Mike Tomlin is as a head coach?
I mean, the fact that they're able to win the same way when they have such a limited way of winning is ridiculous. It shows how he gets his team up and ready. Even like the Steelers, legitimately with the way their roster is constructed, if this was like a normal NFL coach, they should have had multiple losing seasons over the last few years. They should have fallen apart, had to completely rebuild. TJ Watt would probably be somewhere else because they traded away from him for a draft pick. Same thing for Minka Fitzpatrick, maybe even Cam Hayward. But the Steelers don't believe in selling away seasons. They don't do that, and they focus. Like even last year when they were 2-6 at the bye, everyone was counting them out, saying that they're going to have their losing season now. And they rally in the second half of the season to make sure that does not happen. And yeah, sure, they beat some bad teams down that final stretch, but they also beat some teams that made the playoffs. And so I think that there's something to be said there about how the Steelers were able to finish strong. And a part of it is Mike Tomlin. And yeah, I think that he's more so underappreciated locally. Nationally, when you ask like the big wigs of the NFL, there's a lot of respect across the league, and there's a lot of respect in the league. Like, you ever listen to Sean McVay talk about Mike Tomlin and other coaching greats, they respect Mike Tomlin. I think locally there's people who, because the Steelers haven't won a Super Bowl since 2009, they're upset, and they think that they haven't won a playoff game in 6 years, and they blame that on Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin certainly has his faults. There's things that he does not do well compared to others, but there's also plenty of things that he does well and that he gets his team fired up for. And I do think that the main reason they have been able to keep this core together, that is now this defensive unit that everyone's excited to see, is because Mike Tomlin has been the coach, and he's kind of steer the ship through some really rough years to get to this point where they're expecting to make a bit of a run. So yeah, I agree with you. Mike Tomlin, underappreciated, and I think that one thing when I talked to him, Phillip, there's a different sort of vibe from him this year. When he's around the team, like he's a little bit more excited when I listen when you hear him talk about the team this year, and he's always excited. He's always loves football, but I think that Mike Tomlin knows that he doesn't just have a talent around him. He has like a lot of good dudes. He has a lot of leaders on his roster. Like Kenny Pickett is a leader. I covered him at Pitt. That dude is ready. Like Swagger, Joe Burrow. Kenny Pickett got swagger. He just didn't attend LSU when Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson went there.
That helps.
Right. It certainly helps a lot, especially when you couldn't even, win a job at Ohio State. But I think that when you look at Kenny Pickett, he has the swagger. I think when you look at other guys like Najee Harris, they have the right attitudes. Cam Hayward's always had that, but TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Minka Fitzpatrick, then you've added Patrick Peterson. There's a lot of really good locker room guys that even when they struggle, they are going to be able to help steer the ship in the right direction. And that's something that I don't think Mike Tomlin had for a little bit. When the people talk about the Killer B era, Antonio Brown, well, we see Antonio Brown right now and kind of what he's been up to. Ben Roethlisberger, I think, was a great player and a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he wasn't the leader that everyone always got behind. I think people got behind Ben because he was a great player and he could pull things off, but there were times where he couldn't unify the entire locker room. And then there was Le'Veon Bell, who another fantastic player, but just not the kind of guy that rallies the whole team. Mm-hmm. I think you have like several guys on the roster who do that now, and Mike Tomlin's very excited about that, and that's why I think that he has a lot of confidence in these guys this year, and why you might start to see a new era of Mike Tomlin Steelers football over the next 5 seasons or so.
We were talking off air for I hit record that obviously you've been at Steelers training camp over the last few days. And I was going to go, you talked about Kenny Pickett. What have you seen out of him and just some, other standouts, with this team so far?
Well, Kenny Pickett, You know, a lot of people ask, is he throwing more deep balls? He is, and he's connecting. Kenny Pickett is getting more accurate. He's finding ways to hit guys all around the field. He's reading the Steelers defenses. And I'm telling you, like this time last year in the first week, Kenny Pickett was struggling mightily against the Steelers defense. He couldn't complete passes. He was always getting intercepted. And the Steelers defense, they weren't like, you know, feeling bad for him. They were celebrating. They were kind of just testing to see how miserable he could be, how he could take that kind of pressure and embarrassment when he makes a mistake. And he's taking it. He took it pretty well. He kind of didn't let it get to him. Stayed focused to his plan. When he became a starter, you know, he struggled early on, and then eventually shook it off in the second half of the season. I think that there's going to be a continued progression from Kenny Pickett this year that makes him a very good quarterback in this upcoming season. I would say, in a comparison, if we're to compare quarterbacks, I would say that I think this year will be a similar year to what Trevor Lawrence did for the Jaguars last year. And I think that's where there's legitimate excitement around the Steelers, is because this guy studies film religiously. He's always getting prepared. I had a source close to the team that told me how even last year, when he wasn't the starting quarterback, he would show up early and to get first team reps when he couldn't get first team reps because they were all going to Mitch Trubisky. He would go through and look at what the routine for practice was that day, do everything the first team was supposed to do on his own, work through that on his own time, and just do it by himself against air, so that he was at least getting mental reps before practice. And then he would go ahead and then be on the second team offense and watch the first team. So this is a guy who is serious about his craft. I think that everyone's excited about that, and he's been having a good training camp so far. But there's a lot of other guys who've had good training camps. You know, I think that Broderick Jones has looked interesting. The pads haven't gone on yet, so it's tough to tell with the offensive line, but I think that he's had some good moments. Joey Porter Jr. has gone up against every wide receiver, and he's had good and bad moments as well, but I think he's trending on the positive side. You know, I think that the Steelers, you know, they still got George Pickens, who's a playmaker. Patrick Peterson fits in very well. This is going to be an exciting year for them. I think that they got a lot of talent. I think that they're going to surprise some people with just how good they are this season.
Yeah, when I was doing my prep for this conversation, I was just kind of looking over the rosters and just kind of like where each team is at. The Steelers is kind of like a team like, and you know, a lot of nationally, obviously you're gonna hear Bengals and Ravens, but the Steelers are just like they're there. We know what this franchise is, consistency, and that's when you put I was thinking the last 20 years, just overall consistency. Them and the Patriots are the two most consistent franchise, and we see the Patriots are kind of probably maybe not be heading in a great direction, but Steelers are still where they're at. So anyways, it's always enjoy the Steelers and kind of keeping up, and you just know what you're going to get, like you said earlier. I think you kind of tipped your hat a little bit on this next question, but the 1 through 4, how do you see this division playing out?
Got the Bengals winning the division. I got the Steelers and Ravens kind of just hovering around each other. I do this a lot every year. Every year I think that the Steelers and Ravens are just so similar, and I'm like, one's going to be like, they're either going to be tied with a tiebreaker and one gets in, or they're going to be one's going to be one game above the other. And last year the Ravens were one game above the Steelers. I think this year it's the Steelers one game above the Ravens. I think the Steelers get to 11-6 this year. I'll say the Bengals go 13-4. The Ravens be at 10-7, and then the Browns will kind of be the team that they kind of beat up on a little bit, and they'll finish like 8-9 or 7-10 or something like that.
It's a very competitive division, which it feels like this is what this division is supposed to be. The way it is pretty much years. And Chris, this has been a lot of fun having you on, talking all things AFC North.
Same here.
The Steelers there at the end. But if the listeners and viewers want to check out, where can they follow you online and all the stuff you're doing?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Cutter Critiques. You can read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com, where I cover all things University of Pittsburgh sports. So if you want to see the next Pitt superstars to come through, like Kalijah Kancey going to the Buccaneers, you'll go check out our work there. We got Pitt training camp coming up very soon. You can also find me on the North Shore Drive podcast in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, on all our podcasting channels and on YouTube. And you can also find me on the Locked On Steelers podcast Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. It's a lot, but hey, we stay busy during football season.
There you go. I hear you on that. I know a little bit what that's like down here, what the stuff I do. But anyways, Chris, appreciate the time, and I hope we can do some sometime down the road. All right, and thanks to Chris for coming on the show. That was a lot of fun. And just to close out here on the Phil Jordan Show, I'll give my thoughts on who I think AFC North. I'm going to disagree with Chris a little bit. I think the Browns finished last, so we agree there. Going over this, the Joe Burrow stuff, not knowing what that is, I'm going to go with the Ravens winning division, the Bengals come in second, the Steelers third, and then the Browns fourth. With the Ravens, if Odell Beckham, look, he doesn't have to be what he once was, but if he's what he was doing close to what he's doing the Rams, and then Lamar Jackson staying healthy. There's a lot of what ifs, but if that team can keep it together, I'm really intrigued what Todd Monken can do. We didn't even talk about the running backs. They got to keep their running backs healthy, but I don't know. I'm leaning Ravens. I probably would have said Bengals before the Joe Burrow injury, but still not knowing what that is. So by the time we get to the season, I could change this back to the Bengals. Bengals, it's all about Joe Burrow, that offense, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, that group, Joe Mixon. Now, I want to see, Samandre P. Ryan is not there anymore. What's the deal going to look like then to back at running back? Is it all on Joe Mixon or what they're going to do there defensively? See how they look there. Steelers, Kenny Pickett make that transition up. Matt Canada's got to be under some pressure. I didn't really get the chance to ask Chris that question, but 26 ranked offense last year, but you see these pieces, get Najee Harris more room to run. Kenny Pickett continues that progression there, moving up, and then what that receiver, George Pickens, that's the guy I look forward to. Defensively, T.J. Watt. Look, that team was 1-7 when he was out. With him, they were 8-2 on the year, and he just makes the rest of the defense so much better. The impact he has on that team is tremendous. And with the Browns, I don't know. We'll see. Can Deshaun Watson get back to that MVP level he was at in 2020? With the Texans, we'll see. That's kind of how I see that division. I got some college football news as I was getting ready to record that one. I don't know if this has actually happened, but Arizona potentially to the Big 12, which we've been hearing about that. Because, look, Big 12's got 13 teams because Texas, Oklahoma is going to be gone. So then you'll be at 13-24 with Colorado coming in, adding as that 13th team. So you think, okay, they want to go with an even amount of teams. So now I look at it. It's Arizona. I saw a tweet by On3 about the speculating rumors, and then Jason Shearer, who covers Arizona, he put out the Arizona Board of Regents. They will have a meeting on Tuesday. Was not recently scheduled. Now, he also posted a picture of the agenda. It says not realignment related, but kind of interesting. Tomorrow, Commissioner George Kilofkoff, I don't think it's a media rights deal. Maybe it is. Talking about the clarity. I've seen that put out there on Twitter. So that'd be interesting. Could Arizona be headed to the Big 12 now? And probably asking about the weekend blitz. Still around, still there. I'm not giving up on it after 1 week. This was something I wanted to get out today as soon as we got done recording that with Chris. So just stay tuned for that, and just pay attention to the Phillip Jordan Show YouTube account. Putting all the videos up on there, individual videos and all that good stuff. So keep an eye on that. Well, anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of the show. I appreciate you guys checking it out, and I will talk to you later on down the road.
Thanks for listening to The Phillip Jordan Show. Subscribe to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch the show over at the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel. Got a question or topic idea? Email the show at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Join us next time for more great football talk.